Snow fell heavy outside the cabin. Windows while Owen Graves peeled. Potatoes at his kitchen counter, 67 years old, and every joint reminded him of it when the temperature dropped. He'd spent the day chopping firewood, enough to last through the next week of frost. Home's brutal winter. Now he just wanted a quiet meal and maybe a glass of whiskey to mark another year passing. The potatoes went into boiling water. Owen added salt and moved to check his greenhouse connection. The plants were doing fine, temperatures holding steady. Tomatoes, carrots, some herbs, nothing fancy, just enough to supplement the supply drops that came every month. Living alone this far up the mountain meant preparing for everything that he'd chosen. This isolation 15 years ago when he retired. No more patience. No more watching people die despite his best efforts. No more carrying the weight of lives saved and lives lost. Just him, his garden, and the endless quiet of Frost Home's peaks. Owen set a single plate on his small table, one fork, one knife, one glass, same as every night. For the past 15 years, outside the wind picked up and howled through the valley. Below, weather reports said the storm would last 3 days. Perfect. Nobody would bother making the climb up here in conditions like this. The potatoes boiled while Owen pulled out some dried meat from his storage. He'd learned to make do with simple food. No point in fancy cooking for one person. His hands moved through the familiar routine of meal preparation, muscle memory from decades of field cooking during his military service. 40 years since the frontier wars ended, 40 years since he treated his last battlefield casualty and walked away from medicine entirely. People back in the main colony settlement thought he was crazy for living up here alone. Maybe they were right, but up here nobody needed him. Nobody depended on him. Nobody died because he wasn't fast enough or skilled enough or just plain lucky enough. He sat down with his plate just as the old wall clock showed 11:45. 15 minutes until midnight, until another New Year arrived on Frosto Home. Owen ate slowly, chewing carefully. His teeth weren't what they used to be. The knock came 11:57, not a normal knock. The entire cabin shook. Something massive had struck his reinforced front door, hard enough to rattle the windows in their frames. Owen dropped his fork and stood up fast, old instincts flooding back. His hand went to the drawer where he kept his service pistol. Another impact, harder this time. The door held, but the frame groaned. Owen grabbed the gun and moved toward the entrance. Staying to the side. "I'm armed," he called out. "State your business." No response, just a sound he'd never heard before, a deep rumbling call that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Not human. Not any animal he knew from wildlife surveys. At a third strike against the door, but different this time, slower, almost desperate rather than aggressive. Owen's medical training kicked in. Despite himself, he recognized desperation when he heard it. Against every bit of common sense he developed. Living alone, he moved to the door's view panel and looked outside. The creature took up most of his porch. Scales caught the light from his exterior lamp, deep blue and silver, that seemed to shimmer even in the storm. 15 feet tall at least, built like the ancient dragons from Earth legends, but real, solid, and standing in his doorway, wings folded tight against its back and in its front legs cradled carefully, a small bundle wrapped in what looked like thermal blankets. Dragon's eyes met his through the view panel, huge golden eyes that showed intelligence and something else, fear. Pleading, he shifted the bundle slightly, and Owen saw a tiny scaled face, pale and barely moving. A baby. The dragon was carrying a baby. His hands moved too. The door controls before his brain caught up. The medic in him, the part he tried to bury for 15 years, took over completely. That baby was dying. He could see it even from here, the shallow breathing, the wrong color to its scales. The door slid open, cold wind and snow blasted into his cabin. Adult dragon stood there 3 times his size, powerful enough to tear him apart without effort, but it didn't move to attack. Instead, it made a soft, desperate sound and held out the bundle toward him. Owen holstered his pistol. Bring it inside quickly. The dragon understood, or at least recognized the gesture he made. It ducked low and squeezed through his doorway, moving with surprising care to avoid damaging his home. Once inside, it knelt and unwrapped the baby. The hatchling was maybe 2 feet long, scales pale gray instead of the healthy blue of its parent. Its breathing came in short, labored gasps. When Owen moved closer, he could hear a wet rattle in its lungs. He'd heard that sound before. Respiratory infection, severe and getting worse. The mother dragon watched him with those intelligent eyes. She made a questioning sound, soft and afraid. Owen recognized that too. Every parent who'd ever brought a sick child to him had made that exact sound. Species didn't matter. I don't know if I can help, Owen said quietly, knowing she couldn't understand his words. I don't know anything about your biology. But he was already moving, pulling out his old medical scanner from the storage closet, where it had sat and used for 15 years. His hand shook slightly as he powered it on. The hatchling's vital signs appeared on the display. Heart rate elevated, body temperature dropping, oxygen levels critical. The scanner tried to match the biology to its database and came up empty. Unknown species. Outside, the clock chimed midnight. New Year had arrived. Owen looked at the dying baby, then at its desperate mother, then at his scanner showing vital signs crashing toward 0.1. 5 years of quiet isolation ended in that moment. All right, he said, moving toward his medical supplies. Let's get to work. Owen's medical database showed nothing. He cycled through every species file in the system, searching for anything close to the dragon's biology. Reptilian, warm-blooded, 6-limbed, nothing matched. The scanner kept labeling everything as unknown. The hatchling's breathing got worse while he searched. Each breath sounded wet and painful. Owen tossed the scanner aside and knelt down beside the small creature. Technology had its limits. Sometimes you had to rely on observation and experience. He learned field medicine during the frontier wars when equipment failed and supplies ran out. Learned to read bodies through touch and sight, to diagnose by watching and listening. Those skills had kept soldiers alive. When nothing else could help, the mother dragon stayed perfectly still while Owen examined her baby. She watched every movement he made with those sharp golden eyes. One wrong move and she could kill him instantly. Owen pushed that thought away and focused on the patient. He placed his hand gently on the hatchling's chest. The scales felt cool. Too cool for a creature that should be warm-blooded. The tiny heart beat fast and irregular beneath his palm. He counted the rhythm, noting the pattern. Stressed but still strong enough to Keep fighting. Next he checked the mouth, carefully opening the small jaws. The membranes inside looked pale, almost white instead of healthy pink, sign of poor oxygen circulation. The tongue had a slight blue tint, definitely respiratory. Owen leaned close and listened to the breathing rattle in the upper lungs, worse on the left side. He'd heard similar sounds in human patients with severe pneumonia, fluid build-up, infection spreading through the lung tissue. The mother made a soft, questioning sound. Owen glanced up at her and saw intelligence in those eyes. Saw her trying to understand what he was doing. She wasn't just an animal. This was a thinking, feeling being, watching her child die. Respiratory infection, Owen said, knowing she couldn't understand but needing to talk through it anyway. Probably caught something in this cold climate. Your species isn't built for Frosto's winter. He stood and moved to his medical storage. The supplies hadn't been touched in 15 years, but he'd kept everything sealed and organized, force of habit from his military days. Antibiotics, antivirals, anti-inflammatories, all designed for human biology. Owen pulled out broad-spectrum antibiotics and stared at the bottles. Dosage for humans was clear. For a small reptilian alien, complete guesswork. Too much could poison it, too little wouldn't help at all. The mother shifted closer. Still holding her baby carefully, she tilted her head and made another sound. This one almost like a question. Owen met her eyes and saw the same desperation he'd seen in countless parents during the war. I don't know if this will work, he told her, honestly. I'm going to do my best. He calculated weight ratios, comparing the hatchling size to a human infant. Cut the standard dose by 3/4, then half again to be safe. Mix the antibiotic with sterile water in a syringe. The mother watched closely as he drew up the liquid. When he approached with a needle, she tensed. Her wings shifted slightly, scales along her neck rising in what might be a threat display. Owen stopped and held up his free hand slowly. I need to give this to your baby, he said softly. It might help with the infection. He mimicked an injection motion against his own arm, then pointed to the hatchling. The mother stared at him for a long moment, then incredibly she adjusted her position to give him better access to the small creature. She understood or trusted him, or was desperate enough to try anything. Owen administered the injection quickly and efficiently. The hatchling barely reacted, too weak to struggle. He withdrew the needle and stepped back, giving the mother space. Now came the next problem. The baby's body temperature was dropping. In human patients with severe respiratory infections, maintaining warmth was critical. He needed to create a heated environment, something to keep the hatchling's temperature stable while the antibiotics worked. His emergency shelter equipment sat in a storage locker near the back wall. Owen pulled out the thermal blankets and portable heating units he kept for backup power failures. He cleared space on his large workbench and started building an improvised warming chamber. The mother watched with intense focus. When Owen gestured for her to place the hatchling in the space he'd prepared, she hesitated only briefly before carefully laying her baby down on the thermal blankets. He activated the heating units and adjusted them to a low setting, monitoring the temperature carefully. The hatchling's breathing sounded slightly better in the warmth. Or maybe that was just hope talking. Owen checked His chronometer, 3 hours since midnight. The antibiotics would need time to work. If they worked at all, that he glanced at the mother dragon and noticed something he'd missed before: scars along her flanks, old wounds that had healed poorly, burns on her wing, membranes fighting injuries, maybe, or something worse. She'd been hurt badly at some point and never received proper treatment. Owen pulled over his rolling stool and sat down near the warming chamber. Exhaustion hit him suddenly. He was too old for this, too out of practice. His hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline. The mother settled onto the floor beside the workbench. She kept one fork extended toward her baby, maintaining contact without disturbing the warming setup. Her eyes never left the small form. Owen recognized that vigil. He'd sat similar watches during the war, stayed beside dying patients through long nights, hoping his treatment would be enough. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. "Your baby is a fighter," Owen said quietly. "That's good. Fighters have better chances." The mother made a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr, not threatening, almost comforting, like she was trying to soothe her child even in sleep. An hour passed. The hatchling's breathing remained labored, but didn't get worse. Owen counted that as a small victory. He added moisture to the warming chamber, creating humid air to help with the lung congestion. Another hour. The baby's color looked slightly better, less gray and more of a pale blue. The fever seemed to be rising, though body fighting the infection. Owen prepared a cooling cloth and gently placed it on a hatchling's head. The mother watched but didn't interfere. She decided to trust him completely. Dawn light started filtering through the cabin windows. The storm outside had intensified, wind screaming around the mountain peak. They were isolated up here, cut off from any help. Just an old medic, a desperate alien mother, and a dying baby. The hatchling suddenly convulsed. The hatchling's entire body went rigid, its back arched and legs kicked out in violent spasms. Owen lunged forward, hands moving on pure instinct. He needed to keep the baby from hurting itself, needed to protect its airway. The mother released a sound that shook the entire cabin. Not a roar, something worse, a cry of pure anguish that made Owen's bones ache. She started to reach for her child but stopped herself, seeming to understand that Owen needed space to work. Seizure. The fever had spiked too high too fast. Owen grabbed his scanner with one hand while using the other to gently turn the hatchling on its side. The temperature reading confirmed his fear. Critical levels. The small body was cooking itself, trying to fight the infection. That he'd seen this before during the war. Young soldiers with severe infections, bodies overreacting to the treatment. Sometimes the cure triggered a worse crisis than the disease itself. Owen's hands moved through remembered procedures, even as his mind raced through options. Ice. He needed to cool the baby down immediately. Owen ran to his kitchen and yanked open his freezer. He dumped ice into a bowl and rushed back. The mother watched with those huge eyes as he began placing ice packs around her baby's small form, careful to avoid direct contact with the skin, but close enough to draw heat away. Convulsions continued. Each spasm seemed to last forever. Owen counted seconds, watching the tiny chest, making sure breathing continued even through the seizure. 30-second, 40. The muscles needed to relax soon, or the body would exhaust itself completely. The mother moved closer, her massive head hovering above the workbench. She made soft sounds now, a rhythmic pruning that seemed instinctive, parent comforting. Child, the sound was surprisingly gentle coming from such a huge creature. 50 seconds, the spasm started to weaken. Owen kept his hand on a hatchling's side, feeling the muscles slowly unclench. 60 seconds, the seizure stopped. The small body went limp. Breathing shallow but steady, Owen checked the scanner again. Temperature dropping, still dangerous but falling away from critical. He adjusted the ice packs and kept monitoring vitals. Heart rate was too fast but strong. Oxygen levels still low but stable. He slumped back in his chair, hands shaking. Too close, way too close. Another few minutes of that fever and they would have lost the baby completely. The mother touched his shoulder with one massive claw so gently it barely registered his pressure. Owen looked up at her and saw gratitude mixed with fear. She knew how near death her child had come, not out of danger yet. Owen said quietly, "We need to manage this fever better." He stood and went back to his medical supplies. His old field kit from the war contained equipment he hadn't thought about in years. There in the bottom compartment was what he needed, a portable oxygen generator designed for field treatment of respiratory casualties. Owen pulled it out and checked the power cell, still half charged. The military-built things to last. He connected the tubing and set up a small oxygen mask, sizing it down as much as possible for the hatchling's tiny face. The mother watched him work, but didn't interfere. She seemed to understand that he was trying to help. When he gently placed the mask over her baby's snout and mouth, she leaned in close and made a questioning sound. "Oxygen," Owen explained, pointing to the machine. "Help it breathe easier while the lungs heal." The hatchling's breathing did improve slightly with the supplemental oxygen. The wet rattle lessened just a bit. Owen watched the monitor and allowed himself a small hope that they were finally moving in the right direction. He thought back to the frontier wars, to a young soldier named Davis who'd come down with a severe respiratory infection during a desert campaign. They'd been cut off from proper medical facilities, surrounded by enemy forces. Owen had kept that kid alive for 6 days using nothing but field supplies and stubborn determination. The pathogen that had infected Davis thrived in dry heat but couldn't handle cold or moisture. When they'd finally evacuated to a mountain base, the kid had recovered within days. The change in environment had done more than any medicine. Owen looked at the hatchling and then at the mother's obvious adaptations for warmth, the scales designed to hold heat, the ability to generate fire. This was a species built for hot climates, probably aid like Davis's desert. Frosto homes frozen mountains would be torture for them. The infection might be opportunistic, something that moved in because the cold had already weakened the hatchling system, which meant traditional antibiotics might not be enough. He needed to create an environment hostile to the pathogen itself. Owen's greenhouse, the temperature in there stayed at tropical levels year-round to support his plants, hot and humid. Nothing like the cold, dry air of his cabin. He stood and moved to the greenhouse connection door. The mother followed, unwilling to leave her baby even for a moment. Owen checked the environmental controls. 28 degrees C, humidity at 70%, Perfect, I'm going to try. Something, he told the mother, your baby needs warmth and moisture more than these heating units can provide. He began carefully disconnecting the oxygen generator to make it portable. Mother watched closely and then, without prompting, gently lifted her hatchling. In her 4 legs, she'd understood his intention. They were moving to the greenhouse. Owen led the way through the connecting door. The warm, humid air hit them immediately. He'd grown tomatoes, peppers, and various tropical herbs in here. Now it would serve as a recovery ward for an alien baby. He cleared space on his largest grow table and set up the oxygen generator again. The mother placed her child down carefully, arranging the tiny form with obvious tenderness. In the better light of the greenhouse, Owen could see the hatchling scales had regained a hint of color, pale blue instead of gray. Owen created a steam treatment using mineral supplements from his plant nutrients. He'd used similar approaches for Davis, helping break up lung congestion. He set the mist generator near the hatchling and adjusted the flow. An hour passed. Then another. The baby's breathing gradually smoothed out. The wet rattle faded. Color continued to improve. The fever stabilized at lower levels. The mother never left her child's side. She made those soft crooning sounds continuously, sometimes touching the small form with gentle claws. Owen found himself moved by the obvious love. Every gesture, memories surfaced that he'd buried for years. The soldiers he'd saved, the ones he'd lost, the weight of all those lives that had depended on his skill. He'd run from that weight, hidden from it in this isolated mountain cabin. But watching this mother's desperate love for her child, Owen remembered why he'd become a medic in the first place. Not for glory or recognition, from moments like this, for the chance to fight death, and sometimes when dawnlight filled the greenhouse through the glass panels, the storm outside had calmed to light snow. Owen checked the hatchling's vitals one more time. Breathing steady, temperature stable, oxygen levels improving. The crisis had passed. Owen stepped outside his cabin for the first time since the dragon mother had arrived. He needed firewood from a storage shed and wanted to check the storm damage. Dawn had fully broken now, pale winter light reflecting off fresh snow point. 3 massive shapes circled overhead that he froze, hand instinctively moving toward his pistol. More dragons, each one as large as the mother inside his greenhouse. They spiraled down through the cold air with surprising grace for creatures so huge. The first landed 20 ft from his door, claws digging into the snow. Deep emerald scales covered its body. The second touched down beside it, dark red with gold highlights. The third, slightly smaller but still enormous, settled on his roof with a heavy thud that made the whole cabin shake. Owen's heart murmured. One dragon he could maybe understand as a desperate parent. 3 more suggested something organized, something planned. He pulled his pistol and held it low, not pointing but ready. The emerald dragon moved forward slowly. It carried something in its 4 legs, bundles wrapped in what looked like woven plant fiber. The creature stopped 10 ft away and carefully placed the bundles on the ground, then backed up several steps. The red dragon approached next, also carrying supplies. It added its bundles to the growing pile and retreated. The one on the roof launched itself, circled once, and dropped a larger package that landed with a soft thump in the snow. None of them made threatening moves, no aggressive postures, no signs of attack. They were bringing gifts. The cabin door opened behind Owen. The mother dragon emerged, moving carefully to avoid damaging his door frame. She called out to the others, a series of complex sounds that range from low rumbles to higher chirps. The three newcomers responded. A conversation Owen realized. They were actually talking to each other. This wasn't animal intelligence. These were people that he lowered his pistol slowly and approached the bundles. The mother made an encouraging sound, so he knelt and opened the first package. Inside were plants he'd never seen before, thick leaves with a waxy coating, roots that still had soil clinging to them, seed pods in various colors. The second bundle contained minerals, crystalline structures in blues and greens, metallic ores, and something that looked like volcanic glass, medical compounds maybe, or nutritional supplements for their species. The largest package held what appeared to be preserved food, dried meat from some alien animal, fruits that sparkled with frost, nuts or seeds packed carefully in layers. Owen looked up at the four dragons watching him. They brought supplies for their hatchling, medical treatments from their own knowledge, food to sustain the mother while she stayed with her baby. They were trying to help in the only way they knew how. The mother moved to his side and gently touched one of the plants. She made a specific sound, then mimicked eating. Message clear: this plant was medicinal, meant to be consumed. Owen stood and gestured toward his cabin. Come inside. All of you. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly. Getting four dragons into his cabin proved challenging. They had to squeeze through the doorway one at a time, folding wings tight and moving with extreme care. Owen appreciated that they were trying not to destroy his home, even though they easily could have. He brought out his old translation device from storage. Military issue designed to help establish communication with unknown species during first contact situations. The frontier wars had involved dozens of alien encounters, some peaceful, some not. This device had helped bridge gaps. When words failed, Owen activated it and set it on his table. The machine began analyzing the sounds the dragons made, searching for patterns and structure. It would take time to build a working translation base, but it was a start. The emerald dragon approached the device and examined it closely. Then it made a deliberate series of sounds, varying pitch and rhythm, like it was testing the machine. Smart, it understood what the device was for and was trying to help it learn. Over the next hour, Owen worked with all four dragons. They would point to objects and make sounds. The machine recorded and categorized: chair, table, water, food, heat, cold. Basic vocabulary started forming. The mother led him to the greenhouse to check on a hatchling. The baby was sleeping peacefully now, breathing steady and even. Its scales had brightened to a healthy pale blue, still weak, still recovering, but alive and improving. She made a sound that the translator labeled as inquiry. Owen pulled up the hatchling's vital signs on a scanner and showed her the display. He pointed to the improving numbers, then gave a thumbs-up gesture. The mother touched his shoulder again with that same gentle pressure. The translator chimed, "Gratitude, thank you, you're welcome," Owen said softly. The red dragon entered the greenhouse carrying some of the plants they brought. It set them down and began organizing them, separating them into different groups. The Emerald one joined in, and together they seemed to be creating categories. Owen watched with growing fascination. They were sharing their medical knowledge with him, showing him which plants treated what conditions. The translator picked up fragments: fever reducer, L pain relief, immune boost. They spent hours exchanging information. Owen explained basic human medical principles through gestures and simple words the translator had learned. The dragons demonstrated their natural healing methods, showing him how they prepared medicines from plants and minerals. The smallest dragon, the one that had landed on his roof, approached with something new. Flat piece of what looked like treated leather. It had markings on it, symbols arranged in patterns. The dragon made sounds while pointing to different symbols. The translator worked hard on this one. Finally, a partial translation came through. Story, history, legend. The dragon was trying to tell him something important. It pointed to a symbol that looked like a simplified human figure, then made specific sounds. The translator chimed again with a phrase that made Owen's breath catch. Soft healers. The dragon repeated the sounds and pointed to Owen. Then it gestured to all the humans in the symbol. Writing. The translator refined its reading. The soft healers, ancient story, legend, truth. Owen stared at the marking. You know about humans. You've heard of us. The dragon made confirming sounds. It showed more symbols. Humans staying behind in battles to help the injured. Humans sharing medicine with species they just met. Stories that it spread across the galaxy, becoming legends among various species. Dragons called humans the soft healers because no other race in known space had ever made compassion and medical care such a fundamental part of their identity. Even in war, even against enemies, humans try to save lives. Owen had never thought his service meant anything beyond his unit, just doing his job. He'd always told himself nothing special, but these dragons had traveled across space, carrying stories about humans like him, legends built on thousands of medics and doctors who'd chosen to help anyone who needed it. The mother dragon made a long, complex sound. The translator worked on it, parsing meaning. Finally, it displayed the translation that we came seeking. The soft healers. We hoped the legends were true. Our children are dying in this cold world. We needed help. We believed you would help us. Owen looked at the 4 dragons watching him with those intelligent golden eyes. They'd sought out humanity specifically because of its reputation for compassion. They'd trusted the stories enough to bring their dying children to a stranger. How many? Owen asked quietly. How many hatchlings are sick? The emerald dragon made sounds. The translator showed numbers: 12 hatchlings, 20 adults. Entire clan, all suffering from the cold, from infections, from conditions they didn't know how to treat in this environment. The mother added more. They'd fled their dying world months ago. Frosto home had been the only planet accepting refugees. They'd arrived desperate and unprepared for the brutal cold. The colony authorities had given them land in the mountains, far from human settlements, isolation that was killing them slowly. Owen thought about his greenhouse, his medical supplies, his 15 years of isolation. He thought about all those soldiers he'd saved during the war. He thought about the weight he'd carried and the purpose he'd abandoned. I'll help, he said. Simply, all of you. We'll figure this out together. Owen spent the next 3 days teaching the dragons basic medical care while they taught him about their biology. The translator improved rapidly. With constant use, complex ideas started flowing between them. The mother dragon's name translated roughly as Brightwing. The hatchling she brought was Little Spark, named for the tiny flames it had produced before getting sick. The emerald dragon was called Stonekeeper. The red one was Sky Dancer, and the smallest was Raining. Their species called themselves Solar Wings. They'd evolved on a desert planet with 3 suns where temperatures never dropped below 30 degrees C. Frostum's winter was literally freezing them to death. Owen showed Brightwing how to check her child's temperature and breathing. He demonstrated proper medication dosing using the plants they brought combined with his antibiotics. The Solar Wings were quick learners, intelligent and focused. They absorbed information like sponges. Little Spark improved daily. The hatchling started staying awake for longer periods, began eating small amounts of food. One morning, Owen arrived in the greenhouse to find the baby attempting to make small flames, weak little puffs of fire that gutted out quickly, but fire nonetheless. Sign of returning Healthwing had touched his arm and made sounds. A translator rendered as pure joy, but there were still 11 more sick hatchlings in the Solar Wing settlement. Owen couldn't treat them all alone in his cabin. They needed a real medical facility. They needed help from the colony that he made. The call on day 4, his first communication with colony authorities in 3 years. The response was immediate and concerned. An old hermit suddenly requesting emergency medical consultation raised flags. This is Administrator Phillips. Owen, what's going on up there? Owen chose his words carefully. We have a refugee situation. The Solar Wing clan in the north mountains, they're dying from cold exposure and respiratory infections. I've been treating one hatchling successfully. They need proper medical support. Silence on the other end. Then, cautiously, the dragons, you've been in contact with them. They're people. Phillips, intelligent, peaceful, and desperate. Their children are dying. We need to help them. More silence. Owen could practically hear the administrator's thoughts spinning. Unknown alien species, limited resources, security concerns, all the standard bureaucratic worries. I'll need to consult with the council. Phillips finally said, this isn't a simple request. Kids are dying. Owen replied flatly. How is that complicated? He ended the call and turned to find Stonekeeper watching him. The large dragon made a sound that the translator labeled as understanding resignation. They dealt with bureaucracy before. They knew how slow official channels moved. We're not waiting for permission, Owen said. We'll start building what we need ourselves. Over the next week, Owen worked with the Solar Wings to create a treatment plan. They identified the worst cases among their hatchlings and brought them to his greenhouse in small groups. Owen treated infections, managed fevers, taught the adults how to maintain proper care between his visits. The Solar Wings proved invaluable partners. They had knowledge of natural remedies that worked remarkably well when combined with human medicine. Stonekeeper was especially skilled with healing plants. Reininger had an intuitive understanding of body chemistry that rivaled trained pharmacists. Together they created hybrid treatments more effective than Either species could manage alone. Solar wing mineral compounds enhanced. Antibiotic effectiveness, human. Hydration therapy combined with dragon. Heat regulation techniques saved. Severely dehydrated hatchlings. Word spread through the colony about the old hermit working with dragons. Some colonists were curious, others were afraid. A few were openly hostile to the idea of helping aliens when human resources were already stretched thin. Then something unexpected happened. Young human medic named Amy Rodriguez showed up at Owen's cabin unannounced. "I heard what you're doing," she said. "Simply, I want to help." Amy was fresh from medical school, assigned to Frostome's main clinic. She'd been bored treating minor injuries and seasonal illnesses. The chance to work with an unknown species to develop new treatment protocols excited her in ways Owen recognized. He'd felt that same drive. Once she took one look at little Spark, now healthy and playful in a greenhouse, and committed completely. This is actual medicine. This matters. Within days, too, more medical staff arrived. Then a xenobiologist from the university. Then an engineer who wanted to help design better heating systems for the solar wing settlement. People who saw the situation for what it was, beings in need and a chance to do genuine good. They set up a proper field clinic in the solar wing settlement, heated tents, medical equipment, supply lines established. The dragons provided labor and materials while humans brought technical knowledge and medicine. Owen found himself teaching again, something he'd sworn he'd never do. But watching Amy learned to read solar wing vital signs, seeing the engineer work with Stonekeeper to design efficient heating solutions. He felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. Purpose. Administrator Phillips finally came to visit, bringing 3 council members. They arrived expecting to find a dangerous situation requiring intervention. Instead, they found solar wing adults and human medics working side by side to save hatchlings. They found Rainsinger teaching Amy about natural pain management. They found little Spark playing with human children who'd come with their parents. Phillips watched a human nurse and a solar wing parent successfully treating a severe infection together. Then he turned to Owen. "We've received requests from the solar wings," he said quietly. "They want to integrate into the colony, properly contribute to our community. They have skills and knowledge to share. They're refugees who want to become citizens," Owen replied. "Same as most humans on Frost Home were 20 years ago." The administrator nodded slowly. "The council is concerned about resource allocation. Heating costs alone for their settlement will be substantial." Skydancer approached, translator device hanging around her neck. "Now, we mine deep metals," she said through the device. "We forge with dragon fire. We know desert agriculture for hot green houses. We teach, we work, we pay our way." She gestured to the thriving medical clinic. "We learn from soft healers. We become healers too. Help colony, help all people." Phillips looked around at the cooperation happening naturally despite official channels never approving it. Human and solar wing working together because it made sense, because both sides benefited, because it was simply the right thing to do. "I'll present this to the council," he said finally. "I think I can get approval for a formal integration program." Owen smiled slightly. "You do that, we'll keep working regardless." 2 weeks later, the Colony Council voted to officially welcome the solar wings as citizens. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it passed. Resources were allocated for heating. Infrastructure, jobs were created that played to solar wing strengths. Cultural exchange programs started that little spark made full recovery and became something of a mascot for the integration program. The hatchling could often be found in the medical clinic, playing with equipment under Brightwing's watchful eye while Amy taught a class on cross-species medicine. Owen trained 5 new medics in the hybrid treatment protocols he and the solar wings had developed. The techniques they created became standard curriculum in colonial medical education. That Stonekeeper and Reininger established a medicinal plant research facility, combining solar wing botanical knowledge with human scientific methods. Their first paper on cold climate adaptations for desert species won recognition. Across multiple systems, the isolated hermit's cabin became a symbol of something larger, the place where 2 species had learned to help each other, where old stories about soft healers proved true, where one desperate mother's trust had built a bridge between worlds. 6 months after that first desperate knock on his door, Owen stood in the main colony plaza, watching fireworks celebrate Integration Day. Humans and solar wings had worked together to create this festival, marking the official acceptance of the Dragon Clan into Frostdome society. Little Spark sat beside him, now the size of a large dog and healthy enough to generate steady flames. The young dragon watched the fireworks with obvious delight, occasionally adding small puffs of colored fire to the display. Human children sat nearby, completely comfortable with their dragon friend. That Brightwing landed gracefully in the plaza, returning from a patrol flight. The solar wings had taken on aerial monitoring duties for the colony, their natural flight abilities making them perfect for mountain search and rescue operations. She just completed training as a certified emergency responder. She approached Owen and touched his shoulder in the gesture that had become familiar between them. The translator, now small elegant device, rendered her words clearly. Thank you for saving my child. Thank you for saving all of us. Owen shook his head. You saved yourselves. I just provided some medicine and a warm greenhouse. You provided hope. Brightwing replied. You prove the legends true. Soft healers are real. The medical clinic they built together now stood at the edge of the plaza, a permanent structure combining human technology with solar wing architectural knowledge. The building could handle both species' needs, temperature control zones for each, equipment designed for different physiologies. Amy Rodriguez had become the clinic's director. She emerged now, laughing as Rain Singer followed her, carrying supplies. The two had formed a close working relationship, publishing 3 papers on cross-species medicine. In the past 4 months, Stonekeeper ran the expanded greenhouse facility that now supplied both human and solar wing food needs. The dragon had proven to have remarkable agricultural skills. Yields had increased 40% under his management, and he developed cold-resistant variants of several soloing food plants. Skydancer worked in the colony's metalworking facility, where dragon fire proved invaluable for specialized forging. She trained 6 human apprentices in techniques her species had perfected over millennia. The quality of tools and equipment coming out of that facility now exceeded anything they'd previously produced. Solar Wings weren't refugees anymore. They were citizens, contributors, friends that Owen's cabin remained unchanged, still his quiet retreat, the mountains, but he spent most of his time now in the medical clinic, teaching and treating patients of both species. The isolation he'd craved for 15 years felt empty now. He'd remembered what it meant to be part of something larger than himself, that a group of young medics approached, both human and solar wing. They formed the first mixed species medical team in colonial history. Owen had trained all of them personally over the past months. Dr. Graves, one of the human students, said, "We were wondering if you'd supervise a research project on respiratory adaptations." A Solar Wings student added, "We want to develop protocols for treating cold-related illnesses in desert species, prevent what happened to Little Spark from happening to others." Owen felt pride surge through him. These students weren't just learning medicine. They were thinking about how to help entire populations, how to prevent suffering before it started. That was the mark of real healers. "Send me your proposal," he said. "We'll review it." Together, the students thanked him and moved off, already discussing their ideas enthusiastically. Owen watched them go and smiled. The future of medicine on Frost Home was in good hands. Administrator Phillips appeared beside him, watching the fireworks. "Council meeting next week," he said. "We've received inquiries from 2 other refugee species asking about settlement on Frosto. Word spreading about how we handled the Solar Wings." "More refugees?" Owen asked. "Different biology, different needs, but they've heard about the soft healers. They know humans have a reputation for helping anyone who needs it." Phillips glanced at Owen. "The council wants her input on medical feasibility." Owen thought about his quiet retirement, his years of isolation. Then he looked at Little Spark playing with human children, at Brightwing coordinating with human rescue teams, at the thriving clinic where 2 species work together to heal anyone who came through the doors. "I'll review their medical profiles," he said. "If they need help, we'll find a way to provide it." Phillips nodded. "I thought you'd say that. The soft healer reputation isn't just legend, is it? It's just who you people are. It's who anyone should be." Owen replied quietly. The fireworks reached their finale, brilliant explosions of color filling the night sky. Solar Wings flew through the display, adding dragon fire to create patterns impossible with human fireworks alone. Children of both species cheered together. The Little Spark launched into the air for the first time, wings finally strong enough for sustained flight. The young dragon circled the plaza once, then released a stream of bright blue flame that traced through the smoke. Perfect control, beautiful execution. That Brightwing made a sound of pure maternal pride. Owen understood the feeling. He felt it, too, watching all these students he'd trained, seeing the community they were building together. Amy joined him, holding a tablet with patient notes. 3 new cases today, 2 human, 1 Solar Wing, all routine, all treated successfully with the hybrid protocols. "Good," Owen said. "How's your research coming?" "We're ready to publish Stonekeeper's plant compounds combined with human synthetic antibiotics show 93% effectiveness rate against respiratory infections in both species." Owen took the tablet and reviewed the data. "Solid work, the kind of Breakthrough that would help countless patients across multiple worlds. This was medicine at its best, bringing together different knowledge systems to create something better than either could achieve alone. Publish it, he said. Make sure both our names and Stonekeepers are on the paper as equal authors. Amy smiled. Already done. The celebration continued around them. Humans and soloing, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing their lives. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still cultural differences to navigate, still practical problems to solve, but they were solving them together. Owen thought back to that New Year's Eve 6 months ago. He'd been preparing for another year of isolation, another year of hiding from his purpose. Then a desperate mother had knocked on his door, carrying her dying child, trusting in legends about humans who helped anyone in need. That knock had changed everything. Teed learned that running from purpose didn't make it go away, that the weight of caring for others was heavy but meaningful, that sometimes the quietest ending was really just the beginning of something better. That little spark landed beside him and made happy chirping sounds. The young dragon had started learning human language, though pronunciation was still difficult. What came out was something like Happy New Year. Owen laughed and scratched the dragon's scales gently. Happy New Year, little spark. Around them, humans and solar wings counted down together to mark the turning of a year. Different voices, different languages, same moment of celebration and hope. The count reached 0. Cheers erupted, fireworks exploded. Overhead, dragon fire and human technology combined in the sky to create beauty neither species could achieve alone. Owen looked at his hands, the same hand that had treated soldiers 40 years ago, the same hand that had saved little Spark's life 6 months ago, same hands that would continue healing anyone who needed help. He'd thought his story was over when he retired to that mountain cabin. Turned out it was just beginning. The old war medic had expected a silent new year. Instead, he'd found family, purpose, and a future worth building. Sometimes the best things in life arrive when you least expect them.